Silver is acting like we're heading into inflation. Oil has already been acting like we're heading into inflation. Gas prices have come up, and yet food prices outside of cocoa have been relatively tame, especially if you're looking at the agriculturals. Wheat and corn, soybeans, they haven't really made any kind of spectacular moves. They've actually been more around their lows. So what is that telling you? Why are we seeing this disconnect? And I think that's the big question that everybody's trying to answer. Is it related to rates? Well, maybe not. Is it related to the dollar? Well, the dollar has been steady, but it certainly hasn't shown where it's going. I mean, especially as I saw you before, you were looking at the dollar versus the yen. That talk about sideways. That's been between like 150, 180 and 151 for several weeks now. So essentially what's happening is the money is piling in to gold and silver and copper for three different reasons, but also similar reasons. For gold, obviously there is chaos. Underneath this idyllic setting of normalization and no landing, people are seeing chaos. Where is that chaos coming from? Rising debt, rising government spending, Middle East conflict, just to name a few, weather phenomenons that could happen at any time. Of course, we just had a scare right over the weekend with Japan and a tsunami. These things keep flaring up. So essentially what gold, I think, is telling you is, besides the fact that central banks have been accumulating like crazy, even Costco's been selling bars right out of their stores, that there's a gold fever here or a gold rush because people are worried about something. And there's reasons to be worried, but yet nothing has percolated to inflate everything else that normally would go up in an inflationary time. So we have reflation, but we also have disinflation at the same time. So, again, this year, besides the paradoxes and the price rules, is a great year to follow the leaders and follow the leaders until they stop leading. And I know that sounds oversimplified, but really, that's been the formula that works, and that especially means commodities. And let's talk about copper, since you mentioned that. China, China's dead, China's dead, China's dead. But yet, wow, they're really consuming and needing a lot more copper than the demand is much greater than we thought. So how could they be struggling and at the same time having high demand for a basic raw material that they need, as the whole world needs, which is in shortage? So there you go. It's like, the prediction that I had about industrial metals and precious metals has turned out to be true. The reasons may have not been for the ones that I thought. I thought maybe we were going to go into some kind of inflationary cycle. It's been more very targeted, very pocketed in terms of where the inflation is showing up.
Does copper still work in your mind, as a gauge on China activity? Because I could potentially make the case that we're seeing quite a significant bid up just on the back of all this analyst chatter around how much copper you're going to need to build out all of these data centers that they're bidding up all of these AI plays at the same time for, because it's incredibly substantial and there just isn't that much copper supply coming on to begin with.
Well, yes, and that's a good point, because it did start out where copper, when people were starting to feel the market was going to crash for a moment there, Dr. Copper and the whole idea of recession was not doing well, and it took a little bit of time to catch up to where it's at right now, and people said China was part of that reason. But you bring up to me a better point, which is in terms of inflation and raw materials between chip manufacturing, AI, EVs, there's a certain level of raw materials that are needed for all of those, and copper is in short supply. Some people say that it hasn't even been fully reported how critical the supply is right now. So it has now stepped into another zone, and that is also what's keeping some movement here in silver, and even some of the other smaller industrial metals as well, is what's going to happen in terms of being able to power all of this technology that's coming out. As far as water, by the way, let's talk about water for a second. Do you know you need a tremendous amount of water to cool down all these supercomputers that are used for AI? And a lot of the places where they are developing chips are in places where there isn't a lot of water, which is interesting. One of which is where we live in New Mexico and the Arizona area, not known for its water. And water futures have also been going up, and some of the water companies and the water ETF itself. So you have to think at what price technology, right? And that's, again, could be inflationary, but only pocket inflationary, because most people will tell you AI is the reason why inflation will not be an issue in 5 years. So all of this has to be worked